Could NFL Hall of Famer John Elway be facing criminal charges for a reported golf cart incident that resulted in the death of his longtime friend and agent? Reporting indicates authorities are looking into what may have happened here. Let's break down what we know and what we can expect. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, we have an update for you. This breaking news right now out of California. TMZ reporting that law enforcement are possibly investigating a golf cart incident involving NFL Hall of Famer John Elway that left his longtime friend, agent, manager, business partner, Jeff Sperbeck, originally seriously injured on life support, but we can now confirm he in fact died. This is a terrible, terrible tragedy. That's the situation that we are apparently seeing unfold right now. Now, in terms of this investigative probe, more specifically, the Riverside County Sheriff's Office is now looking into this. And the question, of course, is was a crime committed? And what crime could that potentially be? Now, per TMZ, there is, quote, no indication that John Elway did anything wrong. But from what we've been able to piece together so far about the incident involving the former Denver Broncos quarterback is that this past Saturday, 64-year-old Elway and 61-year-old Sperbeck and their wives were leaving a party in La Quinta Madison Club. Now, this is a private golfing community, although 9 News is indicating it may have been Elway, Sperbeck, and Elway's son Jack who were on the golf cart. But it is being reported that Elway was driving this golf cart and Sperbeck fell out of the back, hit his head hard on the asphalt. California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection ended up responding after Elway apparently called 911. 9 News reporting that a source says Elway is devastated by what has happened to his friend. Allie Simon, a witness on the scene, told KESQ, it was so sad and our hearts just go out to the families. We got there and was unfortunately lying on the ground. There were people surrounding him just trying to make sure he was okay. People were on the phone just trying to get help there as soon as they possibly could. It was so scary. It was nothing like we ever seen. You just don't think you're ever going to witness anything like that. Now, we sat down and we did an interview with John Day, criminal defense attorney, but when we did this interview, it was while Sperbeck was reportedly on life support in this critical condition, but it was before we learned that he ultimately died. So keep that in mind as we now throw to this interview with John Day. John, thanks so much for taking the time. Are you surprised that the reporting indicates authorities are now looking into this, investigating this? Does that mean they're not convinced that this is purely an accident, or is this standard operating procedure?
You know, Jesse, I think it's standard. You have an accident where someone is seriously injured involving a vehicle. And in California, a golf cart is a vehicle for the purposes of something like a DWI, for example, a DUI. There's no indication that that's what happened. But when you have a vehicle incident where someone is hurt and you've got medics responding, of course, local law enforcement, in this case, the Riverside Sheriff's Department, is going to show up and do an investigation. Do they make contact with Elway? Is there some indication that he had, alcohol on his breath? Again, no one has said this. There's no indication that there was. But the local Sheriff's Department is going to do its accident investigation just to find out what happened.
And what does that consist of?
First, they're going to make contact with the driver of this vehicle. In this case, John Elway. They're going to talk to witnesses. They're going to see, was there any, it's a private golf club. You would think there would be some kind of surveillance video. When the initial officers or the deputies make contact with the driver, in this case, Elway, was there any indication that he had had anything to drink? Did he say, yeah, I had a couple of beers? Could they smell something on his breath that smelled like an alcoholic beverage? How did his eyes look? Were they bloodshot and watery? Those are all sort of the standard indicators of someone who's driving a vehicle impaired. And remember, in California, a golf cart is considered the same thing as any other motor vehicle. So the initial responding deputies are going to do this investigation. They're going to determine whether or not anything happened that was other than just a tragic accident.
Yeah, and I think that's the question, right? What they might be looking into, why this is happening. No comment from Elway. What do you think? What are the thoughts on that?
I mean, that's standard. If you're I'm sure one of the things he did initially was contact his attorneys, and he was told, don't say anything. I mean, if the deputies are talking to you, that's one thing, but don't make any comment outside of the initial investigation. That's pretty standard. And someone like Elway has had so much experience dealing with the media and other outlets that he's going to be certain that, nothing he says is going to be prominent right now. But again, there's no indication of anything other than people on a golf cart. If you've driven those things, you know that if you hit the accelerator, accelerator, you can move pretty fast. And there's no indication one way or the other what happened. But that's why the deputies at Riverside County are doing this initial investigation.
Totally off topic, but very important. Did you know that high blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for mortality? Yeah, 1 in 2 adults have it. Many don't even realize they're at risk. It's a silent killer lurking unnoticed until it's too late. Here's the good news, though. You don't have to rely on big pharma to manage it. No, 120 Life is a blend of great-tasting superfruit juices that's been shown to actually help lower blood pressure. This is trusted by hundreds of doctors, thousands of people who've seen real results. It's trackable, too. You use a simple blood pressure monitor to see the changes yourself, plus completely risk-free. If you don't see lower numbers in 2 weeks, you get your money back. So in a world where every second counts, don't let high blood pressure be the threat that you never saw coming. Take control today. Visit 120life.com/sidebar. Use code Sidebar or scan the QR code on screen to save 15%. What potential charges could they be looking at? And look, I hate to say this, but obviously we have to deal with the situation if Sperbeck is fighting for his life, what that may entail. So what exactly are potential charges that authorities are looking into?
Right. Well, California, like most other jurisdictions, has DUI-related charges like, great bodily injury from a DUI situation, a death from a DUI situation. Again, it depends on, it's tragic that Sperbeck is, apparently hospitals are saying it doesn't look good, and they're looking at even harvesting his organs. And completely tragic situation for this guy who was so close to Elway and so instrumental in his career. But, again, it's going to depend on what the outcome is for the victim. And again, what was the indication of Elway was driving? And again, that's what everybody has reported. But was there any clue for the people who first responded that Elway was he impaired? Again, no one has said that he was. No one has said this is anything other than a tragic accident. But the investigation is going to focus on, did he have anything to drink? Did he have anything in his system? Did it affect his ability to drive a vehicle? Did he seem impaired? Or is this just a case where someone's sitting on the back of a golf cart, the driver hits the accelerator, and there's a tragic accident? Even without the implication of a impaired driver, you can still have criminal charges if there's any indication that there was some kind of recklessness absent any substance impairment.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that. Right. When we talk about, reckless operation of a vehicle, and, a golf cart would classify as a vehicle, or, God forbid, we hope everything will be okay. But if there is a death here and you talk about gross negligence, right, with vehicular manslaughter or something of that nature, what does that exactly mean? What does it mean? Driving fast, going through a bump? And by the way, we don't even know what the circumstances would be why Sperbeck was on the back of the car. If he chose voluntarily to be on the back of the cart, does that complicate things?
Right. Again, we don't know enough at this point to make that kind of a claim. And that's not unusual in this kind of a situation where the deputies are doing their accident investigation. But at the same time, if there's a situation, hypothetically, where someone is in the driver's seat of a golf cart or an electric cart, and they are doing something reckless that causes serious bodily injury or death to someone as a result of the driver's actions, that could be a criminal charge. At the very least, of course, we're talking about civil liability down the road, but more sort of significant right now is, are the investigating deputies seeing anything that indicates there was anything other than, a very tragic, very sad accident involving a prominent ex-NFL player and then, executive. So that's why there's a lot of attention on this thing, obviously. But it's just a tragic deal, especially knowing what Sperbeck meant to Elway in his career. And you got to just be thinking, what is Elway feeling right now?
Going back to Sperbeck for a second, right? We're talking about somebody who has been with Elway, his agent, since the 90s. He's been an agent to more than 100 other players. He went into business with Elway, opened a winery together. This is a guy, when NFL coach Greg Knapp died in a tragic bicycle collision, he came to the aid of Knapp's wife, helped with arranging the funeral service, but he also helped found the Coach Knapp Memorial Fund, and that aims at preventing distracted driving. So you're seeing somebody who is having quite the impact on so many different people, a great man by all accounts, and this is a terrible situation, but we have to report on this because it has been reported that law enforcement's now investigating this. And I wonder, John, when would we know activity in terms of that investigation? So this could entirely be an accident, no one's at fault. Does law enforcement come out and say that? Do we see an arrest? Do we see a grand jury indictment? What should we be expecting in terms of next steps?
Well, technically all those things are possible. And I think you're probably going to know early on, especially given the how much attention that this situation is getting. If you're the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, you're going to know pretty soon. Are you looking at something where there's potential criminal charges, or are you going to clear this pretty quickly and say, look, there's no indication that John Elway was driving and was impaired. There's no indication that John Elway was driving recklessly. There's no indication of anything criminal. I would think that they would want to get that out pretty quickly. And if they are looking at it as potential DWI investigation, which they actually have to, I think if you show up and you're the sheriff's deputy and there's an injury and there's a vehicle, I mean, that's what you've got to at least be trying to discount. Was there any reason to charge this thing criminally? So I think they should probably know pretty quickly. And if you're the sheriff's department, you're going to want to get that information, I think, out pretty quickly.
Yeah, real quick, the idea of the celebrity aspect to this, right? This is a terrible situation. I don't care who it is. But because this is John Elway, because there are a lot of eyeballs on it, just in terms of a potential criminal case, and hopefully it doesn't get to that point, what does the celebrity aspect of this, how does that factor into this case?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a big, it's a big factor. You're getting a lot of this information initially from a range of outlets, from TMZ to People Magazine to all the media outlets who cover any kind of sports or celebrity issues are looking at this because Elway is such a significant guy. And Sperbeck, I mean, everything you've read is that Sperbeck was like a brother to him. You get the sense that these guys were so close, and you can understand how Elway's got to be devastated at this point. So as far as law enforcement, you can just assume that the sheriff's deputies are doing everything they can to determine whether or not there are going to be charges filed. I think we'll know pretty quickly.
Look, our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts are with Mr. Sperbeck's family. This is an incredibly difficult time. I'm sure we'll learn more information as it develops, and maybe we'll learn more information from the sheriff's office as well. Maybe we will see a statement from John Elway or his representative as well. It's just a really sad situation, and we'll keep a careful eye on it. But John Day, thank you so much for jumping in here so quickly to talk about this. This is a rapidly developing situation, but appreciate your insight.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.